Okay, so now let's go ahead and get rid of some of this stuff. Okay, so we're gonna go right here and we're gonna get rid of all this. And we're gonna leave the cancellables there. We're gonna leave combine here. Um, the next thing we're gonna do is go here to view model. Now we're gonna go ahead and start adding functionality to the view model. So start at the top. What we're gonna do and what we're gonna need is we're gonna have what they call published variables. No, published is basically published is what we're gonna use to replace how I put it. We replace the observable object in the other project that we had an observable object that we created, and it would basically it would know when a change is made to the value, right? Well, published is going to replace that in this case, and that's basically all it is. So published, we're gonna have a var data of type data. Oh, by the way, let's go ahead and import combine. So now we have combine, and we're going to say at publish. We also have another one, and acronym object. Um, and of course, this will be of type acronym object, right? Like the type alias that I have in the model. Acronym object. Okay. Go back to my view model and let's make this optional. And now let's go ahead and say published var list. And list should be of type an array of strings, right? Because we're gonna get this list from our acronym object, right? And we want this to be empty, just an empty array. Why? We don't want to really deal with optional when we unwrap this list and or when we use this list in a table view, right? Um, yeah. We need cancellables here, right? Var cancelables, right? And this is a set of any cancelable, right? And of course, we want this to be empty. All right, so now we're going to have just a generic function that will populate the table view. So we're going to say public func populate table view with list. Public func populate table view with L list. Okay. And all we are going to have, we're going to say input. And this input is going to be an optional string. Now, why did I say optional? Because we're going to get this value from a text label. A text field, UI text field. UI text field, any value that you get from UI text field is optional and it has to be unwrapped. So we're just going to accept an optional string. Okay. That's our parameter. And here we don't want we do not want to return anything, right? All we do is we set values in our view model. We aren't gonna return anything to the view controller. Not directly from a function. Okay. So now let's see. Var local list. We have a local list. I want this to be an empty, right? An empty array of string, right? Okay. Now that we have that, we can say, and it's not being used, but it will be. Guard let input. So right now we're unwrapping the input, right? Input equals input. I mean, that's what we use our guard statement for, to unwrap. Let, okay, URL equal URL components, URLC component constants dot create with query string, right? QUER query parameters, right? And the parameter, what? URL query name, query name. You know, this is .sf, right? Dot raw value, right? And yeah, right? And of course, input, right? Because we know that input, we have input from right here. We know the input is now unwrapped because it's in the guard statement. Okay, right? And we come here, here dot URL. Okay, else, right? Return, right? And just for debugging sake, we can say print response error, invalid URL dot description, response error dot invalid URL dot description. All right, so we have all this. Now we need to go down here. We need to say let's promise equal because we're getting the URL from here. Network service dot share dot fetch API response. We have a real URL response, and it is called URL. Where's the URL object actually? Okay. And now we're going to we're gonna have another thing called let acronym ACRONYM equal promise, because we're gonna use this promise, right? Promise dot decode. Now, so we using this decode, this promise dot decode instead of my own custom decoding function, right? To return a model. This returns a model, okay? And so ours is what? Acronym object. Nym object. No. It should be the big acronym object, right? Not the little one. Acronym object dot self, right? Decoder. This should be JSON decoder right there. Okay. And now we can say here, scroll up here, acronym dot sync, right? And we have completion. Okay. Okay, so now we have this completion. Now we go here. And let's go ahead and let's get an error, right? If case let dot failure, right? Failure error, right? Equals completion, right? And this is how we get our error variable, right? And so in this case, we're gonna print. We're gonna say view model error. Okay, so we have an error in our view model, and this should say error dot localized description. Okay, so that's how that's gonna go for this. And then receive value should be, it should be the acronym, right? I mean, that's what it should be. The acronym. And let's go ahead and, let's talk about this. So we have this right here, this N. This has the potential to develop into a strong reference like we've discussed before. So I want to say weak, self, right? Okay, guard, let, strong, self, equal, self. Um, okay, else return. Gotta end it with return. Right. Okay. Okay. Strong self. So now we want to reference the class property. You reference it by saying strong self, right? Because that's what it is, self, strong self. Basically, once you make this weak, self becomes optional. So you have to unwrap it. And this is how you unwrap self, meaning the view model itself. You know, you say if this is here, strong self. Okay. And then these are all things you can access. Acronym object, right? Strong self, acronym equals acronym, which is this right here. Okay. So now we have our acronym object, but what we want to do is for item in, and I'm kind of going through this real fast, right? Acronym, okay, 0.lfs, right? So in that local list dot append item dot lf, right? So now that I finished copying everything here, I had to make that equal to what's going to go out, right? Again, strong self dot list equals local list. Right? And of course, none of this works if you don't store it, right? Cancelables. Okay. Let's see. Yeah. And so now what I want to do to test to see if list is being populated, what I can do is I get here and I can just say, give me a second, print local list, right? Print local list this. So now let's go ahead and we can do this. And of course, there's nothing. Why? Because I haven't called anything, right? I haven't called anything. So let's go back here to the view controller. On view did load, and let's see if we can call something. Let's say, well, first thing I need to do is go ahead and create an instance of a view model, right? So I can say var view model equals view model, right? And then I can say view model dot populate with list, and I'm going to say OL, right? And yeah, that should work. And there it is right there. This is the list based on OL. Okay. So go back here and see if we can explain this a little bit better. So in a nutshell, this returns my API response that, of course, that I did in the networking service, right? Let me go back here. Actually go to the view model. Right? And this is all of the building of the URL, all of this. Okay. Once it's done, I get the URL, and then it returns a promise or a future, actually, right? Returns a future of data and error type, right? I take this promise and create an acronym, right? So basically you parse it with JSON decoder and you create custom objects based on this model right here. So that's what this does. And again, this is a what? It's a publisher dot, it's a future. Data type error. Okay. So now then I sync it, right? And I see if from beginning to end, if there's an error, right? This is where the error will be. And I could make the functionality a little more specific, and I will go more into that in my API call course. But for now, this is where the action takes place if there's no error and everything goes well. Right? So you receive the acronym, right? And of course, you want to make sure that it's a weak reference, right? So if the reference is there, because right now it's optional, if it's there, then you're going to access acronym object, right? Which is up here, because this is a class property. This is a local property that comes from here. Acronym, you populate that. So when you use your view model, you can actually go straight view model and just get that, right? But yeah, but this view model is pretty complex, okay? So let's go look at the model real quick, just so you have an idea. This model is basically, it has a string, right? And several LFs, right? Or long forms, long form words, short form, long form words, right? And long forms right here is an array of long forms, right? So for every one of these, there are multiple of these. And this is what the long forms look like. They have a string, they have a frequency, synth, and they have other vars with other long forms. They're long forms of other things. Okay? Or they're short forms of other things, to be more. This LF is a short form of other vars right here. All right. So, which means that once we get this, we need to find our array of LFS, the first thing in our array of LFS, right? And we take all the items in that first part of the array, right? And then we create a local list and append it to it, all the LFs, right? And then we take that local list, and set it to list, which is a class property. Okay, I'm just using this right here to print it. And of course, I have to store and I have to use cancellables so that all of this will work. Okay, so now we're gonna move on and we have our list. Now it's time to take this list and populate it using MVVM design pattern and clean this code up and on to the next.